Hi, uh, this session is about understanding interest rates because we keep hearing terms like CRR, repo, reverse repo, SLR, MSF. RBI keeps talking about these terms, but problem is we don't understand these terms. Because we don't understand them, we can't use them to make investment decisions. So we don't read about them. Because we don't read about them, we don't understand them. So it's sort of a chicken and egg story. So what we will try to do today is try to understand what is the role, specific role the RBI plays, and how it moves the interest rates and why it moves the interest rates. So we have this chart with us. It's from 2001 till 2016. So it's almost the last 1.5 decades how interest rates have moved. And see, we have got repo, reverse repo, MSF, CRR, SLR. We keep hearing these terms. So we'll just try to understand what all these terms mean and why and when RBI uses them. So to understand that, we need to first understand what is the role of RBI, the Reserve Bank of India. So the primary role of the Reserve Bank of India is to A, control inflation, and B, foster growth. These are the two objectives of RBI, and in that order. For any central banker in the world, controlling inflation is any time more important, a bigger priority than reviving growth or GDP or fostering growth. And these two are moving in opposite directions. So if you want inflation to be under control, there are a set of measures which have to be taken. But if they are taken, then growth is hampered. If growth is to be fostered, inflation, we end up stoking inflation. So RBI keeps using various interest rates and to maintain its objective. So first let us try to understand, when we say the word inflation, inflation is the price rise. So if 100 rupee thing becomes 105, 107, we say that the price of that particular goods or service has increased, and therefore that is inflation. Now why this is important is because, and specifically from investment point of view, whether it's you or me as a retail investor, or whether it is the corporates, companies, or whether it is the government, all of them have got this interest rate thing, has a huge bearing on all these, on all of us, at a retail level, at a corporate level, at a public finance level. Because whenever we have to invest, when we invest, what we are essentially doing is we are keeping some of our money aside and putting it, parking it somewhere else with the hope that it grows. Now when we say it grows, it must grow at a rate higher than the rate of inflation. So if the rate of inflation is 8% and my money grows at the rate of say 6%, then I am actually losing. And therefore the lower this rate, so if 8% becomes 4%, then automatically my 6% is a winner. So therefore the whole objective is to control this rate of inflation as low as possible. Because of that, in a country like India, there are countries in the world who are trying to bring up their inflation, but this is very India specific that we are talking. So let us try to understand, when we say inflation or when we say control inflation, let's try to go to the root cause, that what are the causes of inflation. Now in economics, there can be something known as supply side inflation. When we say supply side, it means that there's a restricted supply of that particular thing, and therefore the price goes up. A classic example of this would be tur dal. A few days back, a couple of quarters back maybe, the tur dal prices had shot up to 200 rupees per kg. Today they are back at 90, 95 whatever kg. So the price goes up because that particular goods or service or commodity is in low supply. Maybe we can also take, just for understanding, we can also take the example of maybe education, specifically medical education. So the people wanting to, aspiring to become doctors or dentists, that number is huge. I mean, they end up fighting for 99.9%, 99.96%. So there are a lot of candidates or students who are capable of joining the medicine profession, but because of less number of seats in the educational colleges, so then the fees have shot up. So that is, the supply is constrained. What's the solution either to the Tuardal example or to the medical college example is, we need to increase the supply. So when Tuardal supply increases, maybe by increasing area under acreage, maybe by importing, supply increases, the demand by and large remains same, so therefore the price comes down. You have to increase the number of medical colleges, so because of that more students can join the medicine profession and therefore the fees can come down, which is what maybe happened with MBA colleges or engineering colleges, a large number of colleges. So because of that, many seats remain vacant. Now at times the situation is that these colleges have to close down because of lack of admissions. So that is the supply side inflation, that on one side supply is not there. The other side will be demand side inflation, which we will talk about in just a minute. So let's say, so there's another type of inflation which is very specific to India, that is systemic inflation. If let's say for example we are flying from Mumbai to Delhi, then we'll find that the aircraft is hovering around in the skies for some time. We are wasting a lot of precious aviation turbine fuel. That is inflationary. Or if we are going from one place to another, even by our two-wheelers, we will see on the roads that the same road once constructed is dug up by the maybe telephone department, then it is dug up by the sewerage department, then it is dug up by the water services department, then by the electricity department. The same piece of work is being done once, twice, thrice, 4 times, and a lot of money is wasted on the same patch. Why can't it be done totally together? So only once you do it, and so where 100 rupees could have been done, we are ending up spending 400 rupees. So these are systemic issues, and that is causing inflation in India. The third one which we did not speak about is the demand side inflation, where the simple thing is there's a lot of money in people's hands. There's a lot of money in people's hands. So because of that, the buying power has increased, and therefore if I am a shopkeeper and I know that people have a lot of money and there is a demand for the products or the wares which I am selling, I'll obviously increase the price of those wares, because I know people can spend, people are willing to spend, they are ready to buy at whatever price, at slightly higher prices. So therefore, now in all these three, supply side inflation, whether it is medical colleges or whether it is agriculture, RBI can't be doing any of these things, Reserve Bank of India. Similarly, when it comes to systemic inflation, I mean, digging of roads or increasing of infrastructure is not RBI's role. So therefore, RBI has got a limited tool, and that limited is to control the money, and they can control the money in people's hands, and that is where the RBI comes in. So very by definition and by logic, if we were to see, then it is only the demand side inflation which RBI can theoretically control. However, what happens is, whenever in India, whenever there is an inflation fighting needs to be done, then in the front it's always RBI who does it. So whether it is supply side inflation, whether it is demand side inflation, whether it is systemic inflation, anything happens, the fighting for inflation is always done at the RBI front. And therefore many times what happens is, it ends up that you are giving the wrong medicine, the wrong prescription for the wrong ailment. So if you have a headache, you can't have a medicine for a stomach ache. So if it's a supply side inflation, you can't do anything by, I mean, the solution is not in reducing the people's increasing interest rates. So therefore these are the types broadly in which inflation, these are the reasons for inflation in India. Now let us try to go one step forward and let us try to see how these things are moving as far as RBI is concerned, and how RBI does it. So what happens is, whenever inflation increases, let's say 4%, then 5%, 6%, maybe 8% at times. So when inflation starts increasing, for whatever reasons, what RBI does is, RBI increases interest rates, or RBI reduces the money supply from the economy. So let us try to understand. Let us say this is our economy, broad, very simply, if we have to understand. Let us say this is the economy. Now RBI is a part of it, you and I are part of it, but for understanding we are trying to put it like this. So this is our economy and here is the RBI. Now because the inflation needs to be controlled, therefore money needs to go from here to here. So RBI will suck out the money from the banking system. Let's put banks in between. Now RBI doesn't directly do anything with the economy. RBI is the regulator of the banks. You and I can't have accounts in RBI, but banks, RBI is the banker to the banks. So what RBI does is, RBI slightly increases one of the interest rates. Now here we have got a term as, we have got various terms, repo, reverse repo, MSF, CRR, SLR. That's Nifty, sometime later we'll do Nifty P. So let us try to understand repo. Now repo stands for repurchase obligation. There is an obligation on the bank to purchase back something from the RBI. So how it works is, the bank goes to the RBI and says, look, I need, let's say 100 crores. RBI says, fine, I'll give you 100 crores, but what will you give it to, what will you give me in return as security? So RBI says, give me government bonds. Give me government securities as security. So bank gives government security to RBI, and in return RBI gives 100 crores to the bank. This is the first leg, this is the first step. Now also RBI says, look, I am giving you this 100 crores as a loan. I want it back from you, and I want it back from you with interest, and that interest rate is the repo rate. So if you are taking 100 crores as the loan, and the interest rates is, let's say the repo rate is, let's say currently, if the latest then the repo rate stands at 6.25. now this 6.25 is annual, which means if you have taken 100 crores, then for 1 year, let's say, then after 1 year the rate would be 6.25%, so 6.25 crores. But these borrowings by the banks from RBI are not for a period of 1 year, they are for 3 days, 7 days. So these are small, very short term borrowings. But now if 6.5% or 6% were to be expressed for 2 days or 3 days, it would become a very small number. Therefore the way it is expressed is 6%. So the repo rate will be 6%, and RBI says repurchase, you have a repurchase obligation. So there is an obligation on the bank to repurchase these securities from RBI. So in the second leg, what will happen is, the bank will repay these 100 crores to the RBI. RBI will give back these government securities to the bank, and plus the bank would have paid for whatever days it takes the loan, that interest rates RBI would be receiving from the bank. So this is how the word repo comes, repurchase obligation. Right at the moment when the bank is taking the loan from the RBI, at that moment itself there is an obligation on the bank to repurchase these securities back from the RBI. So there is an obligation on the bank, therefore this whole thing is known as repo transaction, and this rate is known as repo rate, which is 6%. So this is, now what happens is, if RBI keeps increasing this rate, 6%, 7%, 8%, whatever. Now as this rate increases, the banks will be deterred from coming to RBI and asking for this money. So by increasing the repo rate, which is the extremely short term rate, what RBI is specifically doing is, RBI is disincentivizing the banks from approaching it for because what will the bank do by taking a 100 crore loan? If a bank is borrowing for 100 crores, for whatever reason, it's a small temporary liquidity mismatch, but just try to understand, if a bank is borrowing 100 crores, the first thing it will do, or it would want to do, is try to forward this loan, whatever part of it, somewhere, so that it will earn some money on that. So if the bank is borrowing at 6%, it will obviously forward this loan or advance at a rate which will be higher than 6%, because the cost is 6%. Now if this cost itself becomes 8%, repo rate, then the bank will have to advance loans at a higher interest rate. Now understand the borrower. The borrower can be either a retail investor like you and me, or it can be a corporate. Anybody who's borrowing at a higher interest rate of 8%, he or she will have to then ensure that the return which he gets on his further investment should be more than 8%, otherwise the cost is not justified. So therefore, by slowly increasing from 6 to 7 to 8, the RBI has indirectly controlled the economy, where the borrower is disincentivized for borrowing. So when less money comes into the system, automatically we come to this demand side inflation, where is a lot of money in the people's hands. So when less money comes into the system, obviously the demand for goods will reduce. When the demands for goods will reduce, people who want to sell their products or services, they will say, okay, people are not buying, let me reduce my prices. And once they reduce their prices, that is where the RBI's objective is achieved of reducing inflation. So that is how RBI controls inflation. Repo rate is known as the operative rate or the signaling rate. So from repo rate, therefore we hear a lot of clamor from businesses and everybody that reduce the repo rate, because repo rate is the signal, and repo rate, once repo rate is reduced, then the overall economy can get a kickstart. The opposite of repo rate is reverse repo. Now reverse repo is, let's say there is a bank which has got lot of money with it, and it is really not interested in forwarding it into the economy. There are times when banks are not comfortable giving loans because they are not comfortable with the borrowers or their credit quality or whatever. So our bank says, look, I have got 100 crores with me, but I don't want to forward it to the economy, I don't want to give loans for whatever reasons. Our bank says, I am better off, or I am safer if I put this 100 crores with the RBI. So RBI says, okay, you can put it. Now let us understand one thing. We have said here that the bank borrows from RBI. Here we don't say that the RBI borrows from the bank. RBI need not borrow. RBI can print money. RBI can, demonetization we have seen. RBI prints money. So bank wants money, so bank approaches RBI. Banks have extra money, so bank deposits money with RBI. It's always the bank which starts. So RBI says, okay, I don't mind if you give me 100 crores, but the interest rate which I will give you, which I will pay you, will be less than what the repo rate will be. So therefore, if you see, always the reverse repo rate will always be less than the repo rate, because reverse repo is the rate which the bank is giving, which the RBI is giving to the bank. So whatever happens at all points, the repo rate is 8%, so reverse repo is 7, 8.5, 7.5. There are, earlier there was no method about how much the difference will be, but then sometime later the governor said that there will be a strict 1% difference, or it keeps changing. So therefore reverse repo rate will, there's no point in learning by heart these levels keep changing. The concept needs to understand. So the rate which RBI gives to the bank is known as the reverse repo rate. So we have repo rate, we have reverse repo rate. Then there is something known as MSF, which stands for marginal standing facility. So let us just try to see what is marginal standing facility. Now, if we pay attention slightly to when MSF was introduced, MSF is this green line, we will see MSF was introduced sometime in 2011. The first time MSF was introduced, it was introduced here in 2011 May, and MSF was higher than repo. If you always see, so you see this brown line is the reverse repo, this blue line is the repo, and this green line is the MSF. So what is this MSF? MSF stands for Marginal Standing Facility. What is Marginal Standing Facility? There is something known as NDTL, which stands for Net Demand Time Liabilities. And by net demand time liabilities, we mean the total amount of money which is there in the bank by way of fixed deposits or current accounts and savings account. So, how NDTL works, how MSF works, what is their role with RBI, we'll see that in the next video. For the moment, thank you.